You and I are standing or sitting right now at this very moment in our lives, right here on the planet Earth, inside of a museum. It might seem funny to mention this since we are well aware of the obvious fact, which is our existence. But I thought we should begin at the beginning. A museum is a place, a structure, dedicated to the muses. In fact, it's a place set aside from other places to study and engage the muse through objects the muse has inspired. I suppose that is what we are doing, though it feels strange to me to talk about art when surrounded by the thing itself. It's like standing in a really beautiful room and only talking about sex while stunning, interesting people are having sex or have just finished having sex all around us. Doesn't being here, simply walking down one of these halls, make you want to pick up a brush or a chisel? Though I suppose the opposite is true for the museum's cousin, the mausoleum. A mausoleum is a place, a structure, set aside from other places to study and engage with the dead. A place with objects inspired by death, be they crosses or names carved into stone. I suppose walking into a mausoleum wouldn't necessarily inspire you to go right home and die. But you would think about it. Of course you would. You're thinking about it all the time, whether you know it or not. And you're thinking about the muse all the time, whether you know it or not. About our experiences in museums. John Berger believes that more and more people go to museums to look at paintings, and they do not come away disappointed. In art museums, we come upon the visible of other periods, even periods as recent as the 70s, and they offer us company. We feel less alone. So much continues to look the same. Teeth, hands, the sun, women's legs. In the realm of the visible, all epochs, that word, coexist and are fraternal, whether separated by centuries or millennia or just a few years. A museum, a mausoleum, objects, a place to engage with the living and the dead. Maybe this is a good moment, in case anyone was worried, to say that Ralph Goings, whom painted Pepper Shaker 1973, is counted among the living. He is 85 years old, unless, of course, he's died in the last 2 days and no one has thought to tell me. So, we are in this museum, which is less of a mausoleum with Ralph being alive and all, to look at his painting and to think about it. I'm not a visual artist, though the visual arts are an important part of my life. At home, I have books stacked against the wall full of Baldessari and Ed Ruscha prints, Jenny Holzer, and others. When thinking about the paintings, collage, and the installations of artists like Ralph Goings, usually words are what float into my brain. I'm a writer. I write poems. Though strangely enough, when thinking about poems, I'm not really thinking about words. I'm thinking about images, if that's even possible. I'm thinking color or no color. I'm thinking about the world, which is really many dreams at once. Dreams that become words, dreams that become images. And that way, maybe every writer, every poet is a translator. And perhaps that translation is like the opposite of the way most films are made. Instead of a book that becomes a script that becomes millions of images, it is images, the brain's film, which becomes a script and then a book. Murray Bale thought that to read a work in translation was like kissing a beautiful woman with a handkerchief over her face. He must be talking about poetry. Charles Simic thought that to translate is not only to experience what makes each language distinct, but also to draw close to the mystery of the relationship between word and thing, letter and spirit. The relationship between words and things. What a great thing this painting is. How poor these words are. This is my favorite kind of talk to give. A talk in which I know nothing, but in which I feel a lot of things, and hopefully can translate some of those feelings for you. For example, I feel pretty good about choosing Ralph Going's piece, Pepper Shaker, 1973. Maybe I chose this painting because Ralph began as a West Coast artist. And I love the West Coast. I'm from the West Coast, and I'm often tired about hearing about the East Coast, with all the anxiety it still carries around with it, a gift from its parents, known as England and France. And maybe I chose to talk about this painting because it reminded me very much of my favorite kinds of poems. Poems that have mystery. Poems that have, as the Afrikaner poet and painter Brighton Breitenbach called, thingness. Objects. Yes, something I like very much is that there are actual things in this painting. There's a pepper shaker. There's an ashtray, paper cone, table, a booth, a window, a car, reflections, shadows, and because of the reflections and shadows, a sense of eternity. These things, to me, look like words. There is a wonderful sense of materialism in the painting, something that is, I think, inherent in Mr. Going's move from abstract painting to photorealism. They are also objects I recognize. And like finding a friend, again, after hours of being lost in the mall or lost in this museum, I feel really satisfied, happy, in fact. I almost laugh out loud when I see, first, the ashtray. An ashtray is a receptacle for ash and butts from cigarettes and cigars. I was born in 1975, so they are part of my childhood. Right now, someone is being born, maybe here, maybe in a place like Ralph Goings was born, a place like California. And ashtrays will not mean too much to him or her, or at least they will mean less. I remember ashtrays on the desks of insurance agents when I was very little, and my mom would bring me to her cubicle at Nationwide Insurance in Northeast Portland for the day. I would draw pictures on manila filing envelopes, and the agents would ash into their individual ashtrays. As far as I can tell, people have been using ashtrays since 1870. People still use them. You can see them in bars or on tables outside of bars, in certain diners in certain states. My friend, the poet Mary Ruffel, once gave me a beautiful ashtray made out of porcelain, which was originally given to her by the writer Larry Sutton, who collects ashtrays among other things. This particular ashtray has a small grooved resting plate for 5 cigarettes, which is also the exact number you need for a basketball team. A kind of swimming hole next to that for ashing your cigarettes in, and a figure of a pig leaning back in a seductive manner, wearing a towel that seems to be slipping off mid-stretch. What a sexy pig. And how wonderfully noir it gets when smoke is wrapping around her. There are ashtrays that sell at auction for thousands of dollars, and others that sell at Goodwill for $1. I like the ashtray in Going's painting because it's simple and reminds me of all the diners I've loved on road trips. That black, often plastic, receptacle of dreams, of conversations and ideas lit and ashed, new lovers found and old love smashed out with the cotton tip of a cigarette. The ashtray, resting openly on the table in this painting, reminds me of a poem by James Schuyler, a poet whose life was the visual arts. His loves, his moods, his days orbited around paintings and painters like planets. Here's a little bit from his poem, Korean Mums. The dogs are barking. In the studio, music plays and Bob and Dara paint. I sit scribbling in a little notebook at a garden table, too hot in a heavy shirt, in the mid-October sun, into which the Korean mums all face. There's a dull book with me, an apple core, cigarettes, an ashtray. Behind me, the rue I gave Bob flourishes, light on leaves, so much to see. And all I really see is that owl, its bulk troubling the twilight. I'll soon forget. What is there I have not forgotten, or one day will forget? This garden, the breeze and stillness, even the words Korean mums. Apple core, ashtray, cigarette. Objects. Here, there's the pepper shaker and the what? I mean, really, like what is that? Paper cone, container, an advertisement listing the price of the daily specials. It looks like it says the word ghosties on it. So maybe it's October in the diner as well as October in the poem we've just heard. The pepper shaker is such a great companion to the ashtray. It was first used, or at least written about, in 1895 and sits in most dictionaries between pepper sauce and pepper spray. It's 25 years younger than the ashtray, so we've been needing a place to rest our pipes, cigars, and cigarettes long before we needed pepper or salt on the table. Going's pepper shaker is like his ashtray. Simple, communal, utilitarian. It's not highly designed, though it does what a lot of other pepper shakers have historically done, which can include celebrating special events, holidays, or transmitting certain cultural ideas about race, class, and gender. This pepper shaker is a simple glass screw top, a design invented by the man who brought us the mason jar. It's also as lonely as the lone ashtray with no cigarette. The pepper shaker sits without its lover, the salt shaker. Here's Mary Jo Bang writing about two birds. They've perched for hours on that window ledge, scarcely moving, beak to beak, a matched set. They differ almost imperceptibly, like salt and pepper shakers. The lone pepper shaker. The lone ashtray. In fact, every object in the painting is a single object with only the idea of a companion. Well, two ideas. Shadow and reflection. Here's our friend, James Galvin, writing a poem about shadows. This little shadow seems to know. How can it not? How can it know just when to flinch, just where to loop and sag and skitter down, just what to squirrel and what to squander, till the light it lacks bleeds it back and finds my sleeping dark-haired girl, oh personal, impersonal, continual thrall, and hammocks blue in the hollows of her eyes. The continual thrall of this painting's shadows and reflection, some kind of awareness inside of them. Shadows are, of course, areas where direct light is obscured by an object, often a reverse image of that object. I like to think of shadows as reflections without light. Or maybe they are reflections because of light, an anti-reflection, a note from the underworld, In this painting, the note might read, castle, pawn, bishop, as the shadows seem to suggest an otherworldly game of chess. Either way, these objects and their shadows remind me of metaphor. I think it was the poet Tony Hoagland who talked about metaphor as a big rucksack, of which, if you peered into it, was full of nothing but darkness. Though once you stuffed your hand inside and then pulled it out, there would be magically in your palm a metaphor. This is maybe a metaphor to explain metaphor. The idea is that we have no idea where metaphor comes from, only that it is as old as our human tendency for fight or flight responses. Another poet talked about metaphor as an action, a reaching out. I like this idea too. Lately, I've been thinking about where metaphor occurs, that the action of metaphor lives between two seemingly disparate objects. Because we all live a kind of linear life, we're born, we get older, maybe we get sick, and we die. It's easy to think of metaphor like a math problem. The ashtray plus the pepper shaker equals the paper cone. As in, that pepper shaker's a dead ashtray. And our response, the thing we feel, is the paper cone. Something in which any and all emotional responses can be held, a little bit like our human hearts. But really the energy, the life of the metaphor, is happening in the space between the pepper shaker and the ashtray, like an electrical current running back and forth in loops. The thing that's happening, the active energy, is very much like a person standing in front of a painting in a museum. Very much like you and I, standing in front of Ralph's pepper shaker. There's his painting, the oil and the canvas. And there's you, the human being, the blood and the bones, looking at the oil and canvas. The space in between is where metaphor is occurring. It's where meaning-making is happening. We are, after all, meaning-making creatures. We are also creatures constantly waking up from or entering into a dream. Looking at this painting reminds me of that, of looking into a dream, of being a part of Ralph Going's dream. Here's the Norwegian poet Olav Haig in his poem, This is a Dream. This is the dream. This is the dream we carry through the world, that something fantastic will happen, that it has to happen, that time will open by itself, that doors shall open by themselves, that the heart will find itself open, that mountain springs will jump up, that the dream will open by itself, that we one morning will slip into a harbor that we have never known. And though you and I have been inside many diners, have sat at similar tables as the one in this painting, we are also slipping into an unknown harbor when faced with Mr. Going's work. There's an intense feeling of absence in the piece, an idea that something fantastic will happen, that it has to happen. Inherent in all still life is the expectation, the kinetic hum of action. For me, somehow, when looking at this painting, I'm not expecting a person to enter. The entering has already happened. And the thing that has entered is death. Still life. Life stilled, frozen, stopped. How could it not be? Absence and the mausoleum, presence and the museum. It gets so confusing. It could be my own nihilism, but I wouldn't be surprised if the diner was completely empty. There's a quiet loss poured over the table and splashed onto the window. A deficiency illuminated by the light, the shadows, and the reflections. There's a going away here, a just having left air swirling around the openness and the objects of the painting. And there is a truth in that, a truth about ourselves, a truth about our own relativity. Here's Anne Sexton's famous poem about truth. The truth the dead know. Oh, do you want me to do it in my Anne Sexton voice or just how I'm doing it? My Anne Sexton voice? Okay. The truth the dead know. Gone, I say, and walk from church, refusing the stiff procession to the grave, letting the dead ride alone in the hearse. It is June. I'm tired of being brave. We drive to the Cape. I cultivate myself where the sun gutters from the sky, where the sea swings in like an iron gate and we touch. In another country, people die. My darling, the wind falls in like stones from the white-hearted water, and when we touch, we enter touch entirely. No one's alone. Men kill for this, or as for as much. And what of the dead? They lie without shoes in the stone boats. They are more like stone than the sea would be if it stopped. They refuse to be blessed. Throat, eye, and knuckle bone. Anne needs some water. And when we enter, as Anne put it, the touch of the painting, we too enter touch completely, even when the touch is the deeper touch of what's not there. Throat, eye, knuckle, bone. There are three ideas of a human being in this painting, much like there are three objects: the pepper shaker, the ashtray, the paper cone. Those three ideas of human presence is the artist, Ralph himself, standing behind the painting, you and I in front of the painting, and those absent from inside the painting. In a very real way, we are all here at once in the event of looking at the artist's work, which makes me wonder what Mr. Goings was looking at. We know from interviews and essays that in his later work, he went from site-specific photographs to arranged still lifes that he created in his studio. But with both, he reaches out from the photo that he takes to the canvas that he paints. What does the artist see? Berger believes that whatever the painter is looking for, he's looking for its face, the painting's face. All the search and the losing and the refinding is about that. And its face means what? He's looking for its return gaze, and he's looking for its expression, a slight sign of its inner life. And this is true whether he's painting a cherry, a bicycle, a blue rectangle, a carcass, a river, a bush, a hill, or his own reflection in the mirror. And so it's true of what is being painted here: the pepper shaker, the ashtray, the paper cone. Isn't the action of the painting the realization of the face, of the painting's self? I know we were just talking about loss, about death. I know we were walking through the painting and into the mausoleum. But now, suddenly, the light is striking me in a way that reminds me of this life, of this day, this day we've been living in since we woke up this morning. Maybe a little melancholy, but also, isn't it hopeful as well? It's almost the light more than the objects themselves that makes me think of place. A place, the diner, and also the painting as a place. Berger asks, how does a painting become a place? A place in which the definition is stronger than a mere reference. Berger believes, and I like to agree with him because he's very kind and smart, that when a place is found, it is found somewhere on the frontier between nature and art, and that the painter is continually trying to discover, to stumble upon the place which will contain and surround his or her present act of painting. Though when the painting itself fails to become a place, fails to be inside its own truth, then it is just decoration, a representation. What an interesting thing to think about with Ralph Going's work. He begins with objects, takes a picture of them, which is a kind of representation of the scene, and then paints from the photo. But what we see, what is created, I think, is not mere representation. Perhaps with photorealism or with realistic sculpture, our first impulse is only the reaction of, holy shit, that looks so real. But with Going's work, which is messier than it looks, you can see it here a little bit. If you're ever in a gallery that lets you get your nose into the paint, you can see that there's little missteps, that there's something human in the paint. And in that, a place is being created, and for me, a kind of deep resonance. The light is not only pictorial light, but also a light that has an inner self, an inner world of emotional texture added to the painting. And here, the objects, the pepper shaker, ashtray, and paper cone, become different than their real selves. They become part of the place of the painting out of which we can feel the heat, the breath of the face, the life that is reaching out toward us. Life, light, the muse. Hey, you guys, we're back in the museum. The recognized mysterious place. Here is the poet Lysel Mueller, your friend and mine, on all these subjects at once in one poem. Sometimes when the light strikes at odd angles and pulls you back into childhood, and you are passing a crumbling mansion completely hidden behind old willows, or an empty convent guarded by hemlocks and giant firs standing hip to hip. You know again that behind that wall, under the uncut hair of the willows, something secret is going on. So marvelous and dangerous that if you crawled through and saw, you would die or be happy forever. Isn't there something secret going on in every piece of art? Isn't the light in this painting saying something about secrets? Something about revealing, about revelation. My friend who gave me the porcelain pig ashtray wrote this about secrets. The idea of a secret that will be revealed always results in one of two scenarios: death and destruction, or self-discovery and recovery beyond our wildest dreams of unification. And in the greatest of sagas, both at the same time. You would die or be happy forever. Death and destruction or self-discovery. The mausoleum or the museum. I have found both when looking at this painting. And I've wondered about its secret, that is, its meaning. Or maybe in a more personal way, its energy and compulsion of being. How does the secret, the metaphoric experience happen when we are looking at photorealist paintings or realistic sculpture? What is happening when the pepper shaker looks so real? Or when we walk into a gallery and there's nothing but a washing machine sitting in the center of the room like a throne? The Berlin-based American sculptor Jason Dodge has mentioned, do you guys know his work? Yeah? If you don't, what a great day for you. You go look him up. Amazing. The Berlin-based American sculptor Jason Dodge has mentioned that the actual thing is very important, not the image of the thing or the way it exists in space sculpturally. He's interested in the matter itself, the substance of the thing as a record. The works are removed from one context and put into another in a simple exchange. And can't this be applied to Ralph's painting? The pepper shaker, the ashtray, the paper cone. In fact, the whole corner of this diner is removed from the context of its original physicality, that's a word, and placed into another, the place of the painting. And through this exchange, meaning is both piled on and drawn out of the piece. Within the installation piece of my dreams, that washing machine, the washing machine's secret is that it is a throne. The pepper shaker's secret is that it is life, and so it is death. Perhaps the secret is in its realness, somewhere hidden in some group of nerve endings, deep inside my lizard brain. I am maybe beginning to understand the secret experience of this particular work. If I stand here long enough, the metaphor being created between myself and the painting expands and contracts. My engagement in this house, built for the muse, begins to deepen. I like this painting. Really, that's all I ever wanted to say to you. It reminds me of things I've lost, moments, objects, people. It reminds me of my own shadow, and it reminds me of my own reflection. It is both the museum and the mausoleum. About his own work, Ralph Goings has said, "It's all visceral. I just respond to things I see and go with that without trying to analyze why I like them. I'm afraid if I think about it too much, I might mess it up. I've tried to do the same with these notes, though I'm sure a mess has been made. I wish now we could walk alone through the museum and stop and look and feel and be alone with the self as we are engaging the muse. So in an attempt to recreate this, I would like to end with Rebecca Lindbergh's poem in the Museum of Lost Objects. In the Museum of Lost Objects, you'll find labels describing what is gone: an empress's bones, a stolen painting of a man in a feathered helmet holding a flag-draped spear, a vellum gospel hidden somewhere long ago, forgotten, would have sat on that pedestal. This glass cabinet could have kept the first salts carried back from Levant. To help us comprehend the magnitude of absence, huge rooms lie empty of their wonders. The Colossus, Babylon's hanging gardens, and in this gallery, empty shelves enough to hold all the scrolls of Alexandria. My love, I've petitioned the curator, who has acquired an empty chest representing all the poems you will never write. It will be kept with the others in the poets' gallery. Next door, a vacant room echoes with the spill of jewels buried by a pirate who died before disclosing their whereabouts. I hope you don't mind, but I have kept a few of your pieces for my private collection. I think you know the ones I mean. A pepper shaker, an ashtray, a paper cone. Thank you, Ralph Goings, and thank you for listening to me.